welcoming you to the Mars Society Ambassador Briefing. It's August 8th, 2023. I'm James Melton, the Chief Ambassador of the Mars Society, and I like to start these programs with our mission statement. The Mars Society Ambassador Program is designed to serve as a team of educated people dedicated to elevating public awareness of our mission to land humans on Mars within this decade and begin settling the red planet. Now, to me, that sounds like we're getting very close to becoming a multi-planet species. And to the average person, that may sound like it's a job for Wonder Woman or Superman. Fortunately, in the Mars Society, especially in the Ambassador Program, we have a number of people who actually mirror those qualities. And you'll find out more about that at the International Mars Society Convention in Tempe, Arizona on October 5th through the 8th at Arizona State University. You're all encouraged to attend. We would welcome you, and you will be very surprised. All right, latest news here. Today, NASA released the on-schedule launch for Artemis 2, which is scheduled for about November, maybe late November 2024. And the purpose of that is to loop the moon to get ready for the landing the following year with the SpaceX Starship in 2025 to begin establishing a permanent base on the moon and ultimately on Mars. I know that Gwen Shotwell at SpaceX is working fastidiously and hopefully getting this thing together with the Starship to make that happen. And they're going to go on the Orion spacecraft in November of next year, and they're eager to do that. So let me move right on to our program here. Because this is a man I've been attempting to get to speak with us for quite a while, but his schedule is really tight. Eric McLaughlin is the first astronomer of the Rancho Mirage Public Library and Observatory. You heard me correctly, and Eric can correct me on this if it need be, but I think that the Rancho Mirage Library is the only observatory in the country to have an observatory. I'm not just talking about an observatory. I'm talking about a $4.2 million facility with telescopes and technology to match. And the guy to run it is Eric McLaughlin. The observatory is a city-owned public outreach and education facility located at the southern edge of the Coachella Valley near Palm Springs, California. As an undergraduate, Eric double majored in engineering and engineering physics at the LeTourneau University in Longview, Texas. He studied astronomy at San Diego State University, where he taught classes, and he also worked as a mechanical engineer before heading for Rancho Mirage. Eric's passion for astronomy is both evident and contagious. He leads dozens of stargazing events every year, sharing the wonderful wonders of the night sky, and residents and visitors from all over the world experience this. So without any further ado, Eric, I'm going to turn the show over to you, and I will interact a little bit, but I know you have a lot to share, and if it works for you, if you tell us a little bit about yourself and a lot about the Rancho Mirage Observatory.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Really appreciate you guys having me here. And again, thank you for your patience while we worked out those scheduling issues. Hope you're all having a wonderful time of day wherever you are right now, as we have just about everywhere in time represented. But yeah, thank you again. One caveat, we did find another library that had an observatory dome, but not anything like the scale we had here. There might be something we missed out there, but to our knowledge, we were at least the first fully built up facility of this kind. associated directly with the library. But when it comes to what we have at the facility here, I will save you the whole 12-minute tour because if you want to hear me give the whole 12-minute tour, we actually have a virtual tour on the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory YouTube page. It's a fun tour, so feel free to check that out. But I can show you something of the facility. If you want to see it nice and big, what you can do is mouse over my camera feed and then select the 3 dots and click pin, because rather than sharing the screen, I much prefer to use this system here, which means I can have a bit smoother video. So if you, again, go to that upper right corner of my video and hit the 3 dots, then click pin, you'll have me nice and big on your screen there. Now, when it comes to the facility, what I'm showing you right now is actually Stellarium. It's a great free software that you can actually import views from. And the view I have right here are landscapes for. It's a planetarium software, meaning you can actually do a lot of exploring the night sky with it, but you can also, again, import landscapes. We made a custom one for the observatory here, and this is the view right from the center of the observation deck, where we have 4 pads that we set up different telescopes for. It looks like it's not actually updating. Let me do this. There it goes. Now it's working. Okay, so that view there is, or there are the 4 pads where we set up telescopes. Small telescopes. The main telescope is actually inside the big dome there, where we have a 700 millimeter diameter telescope, or 26.5 inches. And it's actually located right behind this glass here. If you're looking at my little tiny video, right.
Eric, if I
right
could
there.
interrupt just a second,
Absolutely.
Are those 4 pads for public use?
Yes, yeah. So we set up small telescopes, and the public looks through the telescopes we set up out there. We originally offered people to bring their own telescopes in, but very few people took us up on the offer, and it had a tendency to be logistically very complicated. So instead, we just set up our telescopes and have people come and look through, typically, well, 3 to 4 telescopes on the deck, depending on the night. When we have our events, we have people come in, they meet down in the entry of the library, which is over yonder way, back behind the wall there. But they come in, they look through stuff in the main dome, then they come and look at a number of other objects on the deck, and we talk about all sorts of fun stuff along the way. And then the other big important part of the facility is our small dome, which is very different than the rest of the facility. It's actually where the restroom is. The architect felt like putting a dome on top of the restroom made it a little bit more balanced. Let's see, link to the tool. Yeah, so I will link you to Stellarium, but I will note that this is a custom landscape, so it won't be listed in that set of stuff there. So I will get you guys a link to Stellarium. Yeah, so these softwares are great, especially as it leads into actually what we want to talk about with regards to Mars. Mars is, of course, a wonderful world, but it is also, trying to type Stellarium in while talking, that is too much to think about. There we go, Stellarium, get that up here. Okay, so Stellarium, get that in here, go, yeah, boom. All right, so why does it matter to have something like Stellarium and other stuff? Because when we're looking out at Mars, it's one specific place in the solar system, and it's worthwhile to actually be able to know where it is whenever you want. For example, how many of you guys right now could just point to where Mars is at the moment? Like, just physically point to it. I'm actually pointing in the general direction of Mars right now. Got an idea of how far away it is. It's getting over well over 2 astronomical units away. It's actually getting closer to 5. How do I know? Because, well, in Stellarium, we can actually scan up here and see that mark on the left. That is Mars. We can turn off the atmosphere and everything pops into place. Where is it in its orbit? Let's go ahead and turn on our orbits. Mars is orbiting to the left, but we are orbiting faster. And so we will see Mars drift behind the sun over the next couple months. And why is any of that important? Well, because understanding the area around us in a way that actually makes everything real and physical is quite important for people to understand what is out there. The notion of space being this really incredibly far away place makes it alien, foreign, and for some people, forgettable. And so the idea of trying to build an enthusiasm for something like going to Mars, it's helpful to know it's a place right over there. And for some of you, it might be a place down that way or elsewhere. It is really useful to understand, again, that place, that sense of place in the universe, especially when you start to talk on larger scales. When we talk about building enthusiasm and the phrasing of that blurb, while I delivered it to Jim, it was not written by me. There are that notion of being having an infectious enthusiasm for the subject is something that people do notice and will say. You can say whether or not I'm being infectious in my enthusiasm now, but it is something that's important to build, and the way you build it is simply by just getting lost in the subject matter.
And Eric, the subject matter is something people can get enthused about. And I've attended your presentations in real time at the observatory, and you have a way of expressing yourself in lay terms, so it's very understandable. So it's the combination. Don't cut yourself short on that. You are one who can deliver this information well, and you've got a great place to do it. So forgive me for butting in. Go ahead.
No, you're more than welcome to jump in at any point right now. I'm just giving a basic jumping in to one of the things that really helps me be enthused about so much, and that is, again, that sense of place where we are. It's always fun to go and reminisce about good old Carl Sagan's pale blue dot speech and how tiny humanity is just within the solar system. Knowing things like the fact that the space between the Earth and the moon, where the moon sits about 30 Earth diameters away from us, in between that space, you could physically fit all of the other planets in the solar system. It is that there's that much real estate there, but also that real estate is just so spread out. But I don't want to give the notion that space is empty. Oh, what's really fun with all sorts of things here is actually noting things like I was showing on my away screen. This here is actually a simulation of the Milky Way galaxy with, again, on the scale of around 100 to 400 billion stars in it. And we expect there to be on the scale of at least a planet per star. And while we can go and look at places like Mars, and people might say, well, it looks kind of desolate and like there's not much there, it's really not the case. Every place is a worthwhile place to see and be. Because when we actually consider something like this thing, yeah, it is a small, interesting place, but the notion that it would be 1 in 400 billion seems rather unlikely when we actually look at the statistics of it. We expect that there might be, on the scale of hundreds of thousands of at least worlds that fit the same criteria that the Earth has, being around a similar star, being around the same size and around the right orbit. There could be hundreds of thousands that at least get that far. You might need a lot more things to actually give something just like the Earth and another solar system. But add to that the notion that right nearby over at Mars, we have something that is not that far off and something we can go and visit and potentially inhabit, potentially in the grandiose scheme, maybe even make more capable to live on for all of us. This is a notion that the universe, while it might seem, again, like this space is overall vast and empty, it is actually packed full of just so much stuff. What I love to tell people is that if we committed all of humanity to explore all of the universe all at once, and to do so with all of the resources humanity could possibly have, well, we would never, ever get the job done. Because again, a nice little star here around or floating in a nice galaxy is one thing. 100 to 400 billion other places to go inside the galaxy. When you consider inside the inside the observable universe, we have on the scale of 100 billion galaxies. We really have so much in this universe, we could never hope to explore it all. And that is one of those things that, yeah, some people might see that as a depressing notion. We'll never get to everything. In actuality, it is always worth noting that we will never get bored. We will never run out of things to find, new things to see. And when it comes down to it, you can hear all those criticisms that people say of, why are we bothering to explore XYZ thing in space when we know so little about the bottoms of our oceans and whatnot? To me, that is the exact opposite lesson to take from that the oceans being so rich and vast and having so much in them that we have trouble exploring it all is one drop in the cosmological bucket of oceans. We have right here in our backyard whole ice caps that might have underground lakes, as we found with Mars in particular, but we also have other worlds here in the solar system like Europa that has good chance of having an ocean as vast in volume as being on the scale of maybe 3 times the volume of the Earth's oceans. We'll never get there to explore it really well if we can't actually step foot off of this world. So if you want to hear those people say, oh, there's so much to explore here on the Earth, it's like, yeah, but we have so much more to explore off the Earth if we are willing to put in the interest and effort to do so. So all sorts of fun and interesting things there. And that's the blitz through. So
let me ask a little question here. I know you've got more, but do you link it all with the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST?
So we do have somewhat of an interface with the JWST. We actually did a event for the first images being released. Granted, it was somewhat different in time because of the way they set it all up, but nevertheless, we do have a bit of an interface there where we get to be somewhat of a link to that program, yes.
With the Hubble too?
Hubble, we have done a couple of things. Since their program is much more mature, they have a set of how they do things. And so there are some special events we've done with them. One in particular was, I believe it was their 30th anniversary. It was all really well set up, and we were really excited to have that celebration in April of 2020, which meant it didn't quite happen. But we do still have some of those links with the Hubble Space Telescope. Since they're both run through the Space Telescope Science Institute, they're somewhat linked there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Go right ahead. I didn't mean to step
No,
in.
no. I'm more than happy to jump in any direction you're feeling at this point, because there's so much in the universe. I can go on and on about it, but want to actually see if you have any specific questions or insight on that.
Well, I can start it off with a question. Have you, first of all, have you seen the movie, what is that? Don't Look Up?
I have not seen that one in particular, but I have heard of it. And
my question would be to you, have you made any discoveries on your own? And are any stars or asteroids named after you?
So no, I've not really had any opportunity for really making discoveries from here. I have done some research when I was at SDSU, but from here, the main research we've actually done is with the Global Fireball Observatory Network. It is a set of cameras that look for big, bright meteors that fall into the Earth's atmosphere, and the intent is to see them from multiple angles. So we got a all-sky camera that looks through the sky and looks for those big meteors. With the Perseids coming up, there's probably going to be a few spotted by that network. But yeah, that is the main research there. As far as things named after me, technically no, but there are other McLaughlins in the astronomical community. So there is a McLaughlin crater on the moon, and there may also be, if I'm remembering correctly, an asteroid out there. with the name McLaughlin as well. I
Well,
believe.
you could take credit for that, couldn't you? In today's world, you can take credit for anything.
Preferred only taking credit for the things I actually do.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, excellent. Could you give our ambassadors, and anyone's welcome to join in with questions, but I want to ask you if you have any pointers on how you handle your audiences. I've seen you speak personally. You're rather engaging. You command authority when you're up there on stage, and we never have any trouble hearing you, which is great. Do you have any tips for your speaking, and maybe even what audiences are really interested in and how you get them to participate?
Yeah. When it comes to presentation style and such, I had a good leg up on that, as my dad was a hospital administrator and knew the value of public speaking when I was quite young. And when it came time to actually be old enough to try and learn such things, he actually enrolled me in Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a wonderful all-around thing specifically for public speaking and the different things that come up there. What's great about Toastmasters is the way it actually sets you up to not be the only person in front of a crowd. And so everyone in that room is doing the same thing and there for encouraging stuff. So having a nice way in which to practice is helpful. So this group here, when it comes down to building those skills, might be good to actually volunteer to actually bring forward some research you have had and talk to this group. It's not necessarily the same as standing in front of a crowd, because it's only necessarily stuff on the screen. I know there's a significant difference between that. But as far as building a presence on a stage, one of the biggest things you can do is practice and learning, in particular, what's called extemporaneous speaking. You can have your prepared speeches written out and whatnot. Those are good for conveying information in an exacting way, in an exacting order, and an exacting message. When it comes to extemporaneous speaking, what it is knowing what it is you want to cover and actually just diving in, and you can have a nice thing you want to cover, the order you want to cover it, and you only need a few points to direct yourself there. And so depending on how your presentation is set up, practice is one of the biggest things. As far as being engaging and projecting, it's hard to say what else will help you other than actually being able to be in front of people and do it. So I can start by having one person you're projecting and talking to. Try it in the mirror. Try actually utilizing what you've probably got on your computers right now. Record yourself on video. It will not necessarily be the most fun thing to hear yourself talk, because we are our own worst critics, but it is something very useful to sit down and talk through. And most of these things I'm saying, again, are things I actually picked up from Toastmasters. So all sorts of good information you can find through that. So I see there's a question in there regarding things like Stellarium and other software. Can we view Phobos and Deimos as they'd appear from the Martian surface? Yes, actually, with both the pieces of software I've got, you can do that. So let's see, I showed you first Stellarium and then another program called Space Engine. Let's jump to Stellarium real quick because it is a fun thing. No, I don't want to leave Mars behind, but over on the side here, we can actually pull up our location and we can actually say, oh, this is a nice little planet we got here. Let's pick a different one. And we just go over to Mars. There we are. And so now we're on Mars. And one of the fun things you'll actually see when talking about places, as I was starting off with, is places like Mars. We like to think of the North Star as universal. It's not only not universal for us as the Earth's axis precesses over time, but on other worlds, it is a completely different setup, as the North Star, if we switch to or the north celestial pole on Mars, points off somewhere closer to Deneb, which is nice and bright in our evening sky right now. It is in Cygnus over here, and Cepheus is on over there as well. One of the fun things, though, about jumping planets in Stellarium is might not be all that obvious, but we took the observatory with us. So we're hanging out here, and what do we have there but Phobos hanging out in our sky right at that point. Let's see, I have no idea where we actually landed on Mars. Looks like we are north of the Tharsis Ridge and Olympus Mons. So we are quite a ways in the northern hemisphere there. Not quite, I believe we're a bit off from Elysium Planitia, but my particular Martian geography could use improvement. So one of the fun things about Phobos and Deimos, however, is how they move through the sky, which if you're able to get a piece of software like this, you can actually advance the flow of time quite readily. And you can see in a given night, okay, Phobos zips on by quite quickly. So that one, it's worth noting, though, is going opposite to the direction of everything else in the sky. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Phobos just zipped off to the other direction there. So let's advance time quickly. We should see, there goes Phobos again during the daytime, turn our atmosphere off, and it stands out well. Now, Deimos is a bit different in the sky. Now, if we actually just leave the atmosphere off, make sure we can actually spot it. And the reason it is so much different is because of its particular orbit. It hangs out in one spot in the sky quite a bit. Okay, I'm now starting to get impatient. Nope, there's Deimos. Yeah, there it goes across the sky, taking more than a day to go all the way across the sky. So it'll hang out in your sky for a day, a night, another day, just cruising slowly across the sky. And that is, again, because of how close those objects are to Mars itself. Phobos a lot closer, so it's zipping by a bunch, while Deimos is a bit further out, so it is not quite at a point of, say, being geostationary. If we're talking about some of the things we're communicating with right now, like geostationary satellites, those are satellites that are put at a specific orbit that makes them sit nice and stably over one geographic spot. Clearly, Phobos is not doing that. It is way closer than that, while Deimos is on the other side of that spot for Mars. However, it is not all that far off, and that is why it hangs out in one spot in the sky for days at a time. So yeah, that was a great question. For showing off that, I would use Stellarium more likely than I would use Space Engine, the other software I have. That's not the button I wanted, that is. And so that is a great question, and so much fun to be able to actually show things like that, because again, those little things actually make these actual places feel like places to people. So great question.
That is an excellent program. And of course, I think it takes a degree in learning how to operate it. I wouldn't doubt that the learning curve was long, but nevertheless, speaking of Martian geography, in my email to everyone, I believe I mentioned that Chris Rodriguez is an instructor, professor, doctor of Martian geography, and she's giving her last program in the fall, and you may want to refer to the information. Dean Arvidsson, real quickly, would just elaborate on that just a moment.
Sure. By the way, that terrific presentation, Eric, I just don't want to compliment you. I've used Stellarium many times in my class. It's a terrific software. And like you were showing, so many different features it has. Back to Chris Rodriguez. So she teaches at Cal State Long Beach, and she's about to retire. She's going to teach one more semester, fall 2023. So I think the semester starts next month. And she developed a class on Martian geography. I think, according to her, I think it's probably true. It's the only class of that type in the whole country, and you get credit for it. It's a she's geography is her field, and she in particular has studied Martian geography. And so, even if you're not a student at Cal State Long Beach, I don't expect many people to be, fully enrolled there, but you can still take her class through, I guess it's through extension or concurrent enrollment. The details are in her flyer, which Jim posted on his recent email. And Chris is a terrific teacher. She's developed a whole way of understanding the Martian geography, different layers of the geography. There's a name for the system that she developed, and I'm not thinking of it right now. But if you're interested, I highly recommend it. Be a fascinating class on the geography of Mars. She's got all kinds of details she'll obviously go into.
Thank you, Dean, for sharing that. So, Eric, I have another question, and I don't mean to be the only one grabbing the microphone here, but nevertheless, do you, like many facilities, I know Palomar, I know that some observatories, I think even some of the observatories in Arizona, Lowell Observatory, they rent time to either students or organizations who want to explore a particular area. Do you rent time on your Rancho Mirage Observatory telescope?
So we have not yet rented time for it. We do have some imaging equipment, though what we would really need for it to be worthwhile for people would be, we need to get some scientific filters for it, some Johnson's Cousins filters for the camera system. That is the main thing we don't have that would make it something that could have that renting option. However, we are also not necessarily in the place people want to be renting a telescope from. By that, I mean, when you're renting a telescope for astronomical observations, you want the best sky possible. We are set up in a great place for public outreach and education, where people are. We're also only about 60 to 70 meters above sea level, which it means there's a lot of atmosphere above us. And so that means when it comes to certain observations, people would probably lean towards going somewhere else. And so it has not been our big priority to try and make ourselves available at this time. I just simply have not had the time to really make that happen just yet.
Yeah, you're still in a very good location. From my understanding of what Dana Hobart was sharing with me at one time, is that the observatory that you have positioned in Rancho Mirage is the best location in the Coachella Valley, with only about 12% of outside light. I think that's quite a statement for such a cosmopolitan area.
Yeah. So the location of the observatory really is one of those things that thankfully they were able to do good research on, and the city is actively trying to preserve the night sky, especially the closer you get to the observatory. And so the specific location here, we're literally on the southern edge of the Coachella Valley, which means our southern sky is looking out over what's currently an empty lot. There might be some that goes in there, but beyond that, there is no room to build anything. It's a nature preserve, and then the mountains. And so our southern sky will always be decent. And then to the north, since it's almost all the city of Rancho Mirage to the north, it's pretty well protected. And likewise, off to the sides, eventually you get a little more light pollution, but it ends up being a decent sky to work for, especially when it comes to public outreach and education, where people are. Also, I should note on the north side of the facility, we have a wash, a dry riverbed, as it were, that is there to ensure that in the torrential downpours, water will not flood houses. Instead, it goes through there. It also means we have a nice buffer between us and any of the lights of the residents. And so it's a good setup for us there.
Excellent, excellent. We too, up here in the high desert, in the mountains just northeast of Palm Springs, we have our night sky regulations, and people are very cognitive of and respectful of the night sky requirements. We have the Sky is the Limit Observatory,
Yeah.
which Dean has presented programs for before with young classes. Speaking of young classes, Nasir asked a very important question here. Nasir is from Pakistan, and he said, my question here from Eric, in public outreaches, you've mixed audiences, young kids, high schoolers, and parents. How do you inculcate storytelling with facts as to keep them interested in the session and not sharing information? Any suggestions, thoughts, or experience about how you could engage an audience of all age groups to participate? One thing I do here is to put a lot of analogies to make it fun. Anything else you might add would be helpful.
Yeah. Trying to engage all different, not just ages, but even skill levels, because we get people who come into the facility and have no idea what a constellation is. And we also get PhDs in astronomy coming every once in a while. And how do you keep that wide range of people interested is a huge challenge. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to start with the enthusiasm side of things. Keeping people engaged really does come to a good extent down to whether or not you're engaged. And it is hard to necessarily specifically target every single group. However, in some circumstances, we absolutely want to, and we actually have something really special in the observatory. It is our integrated space theater. It is a projection system that basically turns the inside of the observatory dome into something of a planetarium. And we just actually released a new video in there that is specifically geared towards our visiting classes of kids. And so that one, it is one that is much more fun and lower level in its discussion. But when it comes to working with a wide variety, yeah, I will use necessarily different tactics. We have another demo in there that is a lot of information, but at the same time, it does some things that are quite fun. For example, again, one thing we also use in that dome is actually Space Engine, this other software I was showing you guys over here. Let's see, is it working? Yes. And this particular software, it is really useful for a lot of things in simulating the whole universe. And while you can talk in great detail and you can put out a lot of information, when it comes to kids, if you're keeping them engaged by actually making it exciting, flying through space and doing other things, well, we can actually also keep them engaged. They may not get as much specific information, but my general philosophy for spreading information is no one is going to get all of the information, nor should you expect them to get all of the information. But if you can get them to get some of the more interesting information, or at least find something that they can latch onto that is really exciting and interesting to them, then they might go and explore on their own. And so having an ability to simply engage sometimes is more important than the specifics of the research or the information. The information itself can have a lot of good things, of course, and I generally am not so concerned about oversharing. I don't have too many people go away saying that they didn't get anything out of it. I will occasionally get people who say, that was so much information, there is so much there, I don't know necessarily what to do with it. But the response I have to that is, because we're talking about the universe, the wonderful thing about the universe that I talked about earlier, that we actually could not explore it all if we wanted to. You should not be worried about the fact that you didn't get everything, because there is just one thing in there that is sticking with you. That is going to be what matters more, because that will be the thing you cherish. And so, yeah, I love making analogies, as you said, and doing those kinds of things. But you shouldn't be too concerned about necessarily talking completely over someone's head, as long as you're having fun with it and making sure they're having fun with the information. Don't worry about them not necessarily getting everything, because no one will get everything. And that is just the way it is. Yeah. Excellent question.
Excellent, Eric. Eric, thank you. Nasir, do you have any further questions on that, or did he cover the subject pretty well? I'm waiting for Nasir to, you can talk. If you want to open the mic, you can.
Yeah. I'll also note while you're talking there, it is worth noting a couple of things that when it comes to the Martian geography, as we were mentioning, it is worth noting that, yeah, I will not be able to give nearly as much fun information as a full class would. If you want more encouragement on, say, a trailer for some of the fun stuff in there, it's slightly dated at this point, but back in the pandemic, when we had a nice opposition of Mars, I did a video that was exploring a chunk of Mars on our YouTube page as well. I'll try and get you guys a link to those videos I've mentioned so far, as well as the software I'm showing you here. Software I'm showing you here actually costs money though, but it's actually surprisingly affordable. But yeah, great. Glad you got the answers you were looking for there, Nasir. Anyone else have any questions?
I have a quick question, and that would have to do with titling your talks. Have you come across a lot of the ambassadors don't have the expertise, the backgrounds, they're not astronomers, they're just us folks are just normal everyday people walking the streets, and we want to share our enthusiasm for Mars. So many of us can't put the credibility statement after our names and this sort of thing. And I want to assure people there are ways to bring people to a talk. Have you found that particular titles of talks that work better to bring people?
That is a wonderful question. I can't say that I know of a specific talk format or talk name that actually draws more people than another. I hate to actually go down the path of what the internet says, and that would be clickbait works, but more not necessarily. What I go for isn't necessarily clickbait, as it were, but I do go for something that will catch and resonate with someone. In particular, I had a particular, I had a talk on galaxies, and I called it Islands in the Sky, because really when we actually look at the history, what's fun about islands or galaxies is when they were first actually figured out what they would be, what they are around 100 years ago, they were referred to as island universes, because it's what you find there. Being creative and memorable is probably the bigger thing I would recommend, but I can't say I have done full studies on it. My more recent Mars talk was entitled, if I'm remembering correctly, this was pre-pandemic, so it was it's a little dated, it needs some updates, but it was entitled, let's see, it was Robotic Inhabitants of a Dusty World, or something to that effect. And so it was all about the robotic exploration of Mars.
That's a good picture you painted. I like that.
Yeah. And so it is a really, there's a lot of options there, and being creative and looking for something that will catch people's attention. I know we're all from a number of different cultures, and so if there's something in your particular background or area that stands out to people, that is also a really worthwhile way to link to things like Mars, because Mars has been seen in just about every culture throughout the world, and there's probably some good piece of history you can be referencing with them along the way. There's a lot of worthwhile things because, yeah, we all have a background, and there's always interesting stuff there.
Thank you on that very much. While we have Eric's captive attention, Roger, Torsten, Gar, Jonathan, John Ratliff, Ronnie, and Nasser, Ed, anybody else have some, and Connor, anyone have some, there's a question from Dean Arvidsson. Dean is, by the way, a professor of astronomy and physics at LA City College. He's working part-time after a long 25-year career. Go ahead, Dean.
All right. Yeah, so Eric, I'm just curious, I missed the first few minutes of your talk. Do you have regular public programs at Rancho Mirage Observatory? And could you tell us when they take place?
Yes, yeah, we have frequent evening talks. They are actually roughly twice a week. Let's see, I'll pull the web page up. I can get there quickly. And we generally have them Thursdays and Saturdays. The reason for that has to do with a bit of availability and what we are able to do. There might be some adjustments, but the place we keep most up to date is the web page that I just added there. And those events are entirely free of charge. There might be some wait to get in, but that is solely to keep the facility nice and safe because it's a small facility. We can only fit about 40 people at a time in. And normally what we do is we set everything up. You're looking at 4 different objects at night, 1 through our main telescope and 3 through small telescopes on the deck. And then while you're waiting, generally I'm down in front of the observatory talking to the whole group of people there. And again, as far as the enthusiasm and things you can do, I will talk a little bit about the objects we'll be looking at, but by and large, I'm answering just questions people have. And that time frame is surprisingly popular, waiting in line. It's weird, but yeah, when you can actually make a line fun to be in, I feel like you've successfully made a queue. Yeah, and the one important thing I will note when it comes to answering questions, again, I know we don't all have the background to answer a billion questions, and I don't either, and that's actually really important, is being willing to answer the question and answer it with, I don't know. And that is also a really important thing. And praise, I don't know. Praise the fact that you don't know. Don't be afraid of it, because when it comes to I don't know, it's possible that no one on the planet knows either. And that is a thing to use to pique interest. And so, yeah, I know that wasn't necessarily where you were going, Dean, but I couldn't help but reference that. But yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing the website. I see that over here in the chat area, so you can pick that website up for yourselves and tune in. The last call before we move on to, I'm going to suggest Ed Heisler. And if you have a question, a thought, anything you can share or want to ask Eric McLaughlin, our astronomer here on board right now. Then let's do this. Eric, if you can stay in for a little bit,
Yeah.
we're going to end here. It looks to me like about another 15 minutes or so. That's about max. Go ahead, Gene.
Nasser has his hand up there.
Oh, he does? Okay. Nasser, where are you? Okay. Okay.
Please hear me. I have some issues with my mic.
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, Eric, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. We all agree how good of a speaker you are. My question here is, last year I did something as a citizen scientist project. We had a couple of students, about 40 students. We made teams and they were like high schoolers. And to me, that's more important because those were the students, they had never seen a telescope before. They participated in that campaign and they discovered 14 asteroids. Last week, I was searching about something about Mars, and I found a similar citizen scientist project for Mars, and it was about cloud spotting, something like that, in which you can engage your students from 9th to 12th grade. You can engage the educators, and you have some sort of a data from the Mars, and you work on the clouds and how they're formed. So, like, do you have any thoughts about that? How does that thing work, and how I could engage my community here in Pakistan here about that citizen science in Mars?
Yeah, so making sure I understand correctly, you're asking how to engage people in specifically cloud formation on Mars? Or...
Yes, and how does that work?
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know some of the context there, but my first thought on trying to get interest in studying cloud formation is going right back to what people actually see, bringing it back down here, those analogies that were previously linked or referenced as well. And one of the beautiful things we see down here on the Earth is a lot of interesting ways in which clouds can be different. There's a great resource. I'll actually add that as a link as well. First, I'll get these other two links in here that are the tour of the observatory and that Mars virtual tour I did way back when. But there's a great program from NASA called NASA Worldview, and it has a number of different filters on it. And boy, that is just the largest link I've ever seen. Enjoy. But that can actually show some of the clouds activity right over any spot on the globe. You might need to find the right satellites for it. You might only be able to get one image a year at a time. But if I'm correct, please correct me if I'm wrong, where you're at, you're in an area that also has a bit of a monsoon season. Is that correct? Where you have a time frame that's the wet season and a time frame that's the dry season, and it shifts based on or sometimes the wet season can be sort of suddenly rainy or suddenly stormy. And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and so those kinds of things, if you can relate the fact on how weather works here to trying to see how weather works on Mars, because it can be very easy to look at, again, something like this and say, Mars looks like a nice cloudless orb, and surely the weather there is plain and boring. And to go and actually show that, well, it might seem like it, but you can also say that about certain seasons on the Earth. You can say things are always dynamic in anywhere that there's an atmosphere. And so I think that relating back to the ground might be a useful thing for reaching the community. But that is literally something that I'm just thinking of off the top of my head. I'm not an expert on trying to necessarily statistically improve engagement. So that is just my idea at this point. It is not a direct, like, this will work for you. Just want to make sure that's out there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric, for sharing that. I appreciate it. And thank you all for your questions. Eric, it's been a real pleasure having you here. You're a fountain of information and a wealth of knowledge that you have to share. And maybe we can have a repeat visit sometime.
Don't leave, Eric.
Don't
Please,
leave.
please.
So with the few minutes we have left, I'd like to have Ed. Ed, would you mind sharing a little bit about the Star Trek convention?
Yeah, I wish you had another hour.
Yes, we could certainly. Well, we will have another hour.
I know.
A month from now,
Okay.
every second
No problem.
Tuesday of the month, we're back here for 1 hour. So Ed, give us a little overview. What happened? How did it feel?
Okay.
And what were the highlights?
Well, first, I have to apologize to Eric. Whoops. I have to apologize for Eric for yawning a couple times during your presentation. It wasn't because of your delivery. It wasn't because of the content. It was because I'm exhausted from the Star Trek convention. And as soon as this is over, I'm taking a nap. However, do you hear that noise in the background? Has everyone seen, everyone I think probably has seen the classic Star Trek, The Trouble with Tribbles? Everyone familiar with that?
Quadritriticale.
Guess what?
Oh, yes.
Oh no, oh no. I got one and it's giving birth all over this place. Well, anyhow, I picked one up at the Star Trek convention. However, this is the best t-shirt I've ever worn, and it could be a title for a talk.
There you go.
Mars, here we come.
There we go. There
And
you go.
a couple other possibilities would be why we're going to Mars, or why are we going to Mars? And why is there probably life on Mars? Just a couple, there are lots of ideas out there. But let me tell you, I'll try to be concise about this convention. One, it was exhausting for me, and especially our director, James Burke. He was incredibly busy, not only directing our participation at the Star Trek convention in Vegas, but a dozen other things that he's responsible for organizing, directing, coordinating.
How
And
many people attended the conference?
I'm going to answer all the big questions, including that one. Okay. I've attended the last 3 Star Trek conventions. The first one I attended, and based on that, I thought, hey, this might be a great opportunity for us to reach out to common people. There are academics who go to the Star Trek convention, but common, average, ordinary, working class, whatever people, mainly. And we have a lot in common with them. All of them favor space exploration. All of them think we should go to Mars. All of them think we should send humans to Mars to engage in science, scientific expeditions, explorers. The last convention we attended for the first time, there were between 4,000 and 5,000 at the convention, which was impressive. And we had a nice, at the invitation of the organizers of the Star Trek convention, we had a nice display booth in the vendors room, okay? And our president spoke before about 130, 140 people, a special presentation, which was great. This year, I'm lowballing the estimate. I'd say definitely over 10,000. And the convention organizers, a couple involved in that, one said, well, really, we think it's 13,000. Another said 15,000. I'll lowball it. I'll, to be safe, at least 10,000. Our president, Dr. Zubrin, spoke again, this time, not to 130 people. I did a very, very clear count. I actually did a hand count each aisle and then counted people who came in. I came up with the lowball estimate of over 300. So we more than doubled. And he got a really, really good response from the participants.
I'm sure he did. Dr. Zubrin does an outstanding
Yes,
job.
yes. He got, well, yeah, standing, yes. And this time we not only had a really well done Mars Society booth display in the main vendors hall, which had 100 or more vendors, okay. We also were invited to have a demonstration or an exhibit of our Mars, excuse me, Desert Research Station VR. And we did it there. And the convention organizers on these big, huge posters said, we're going to point it out, they were having 3 main exhibitions, one of them being the Mars Society VR exhibition. And people were coming to that. We were set up where we could handle 3 people at a time. And it drew a lot of people. Dr. Zubrin was making the rounds. He spent a lot of time talking to people, both in there at our VR exhibit and at our exhibition booth, vendors booth. The kids especially loved the VR. They would, parents would come in with 1 or 2 or 3 kids, frequently elementary school kids, and they get the headsets on, and boy, were they having a time. They either, if they didn't have headsets at home, they wanted their folks to get headsets so they could visit the Mars Desert Research Station, or they didn't know this. What they found out from us, the software for that very elaborate, sophisticated 7-year program would be very expensive if sold on the market. It's free. They can download our software from Steam, which is a major distributor of games and other software. And they agreed to have our software available on their website. So people, oh, I can download it. I don't have to pay. or, oh, I want to download it, but I got to get the headset. One of those two.
Ed, and this
Yeah,
is
go
all
ahead. Questions. Go
this
ahead.
this is great.
What do you
I
think?
know there were a number, just about out of time here. There were how many speakers? I think there were a bundle of them.
Well,
And were you able to attend a lot of these sessions?
not really, because I was very busy, as you can imagine, talking to people all over the convention, at our booth, in the in our VR exhibit. But there were 8 speakers at this convention, so they're spending more time at the Star Trek conventions on science speakers. That's why they were really excited last year to get Zubrin, Dr. Zubrin, and so much so they got a lot of feedback. Well, maybe could you also set up a display of your MDRS virtual reality? Well, of course we can do. We'd be happy to do that. So there are 8 science speakers, but we got the most publicity from the convention organizers because of our VR exhibit. I mean, it was prominently displayed on their advertising right there at the convention.
Excellent. I'm really pleased.
That I can't. We're almost out of time.
Yeah,
So
I'm
that's
really pleased to know that, Ed. And thank you for giving a capsulization. I know there's 1,000 more things you could say, but I really appreciate everyone who participated today. A couple of things that have come forward here. James Burke has been working with the NASA, the first, the VP and the second in charge of NASA, about an established MDRS, Mars Desert Research Station, in the country of Mongolia. So we'll hear more about that, I'm sure. We have a direct and wonderful following from the people in Mongolia. We're excited about that. Having you all here is wonderful to see you, connecting with you every month. And I receive emails continuously, daily, from many of you with updates. Nasir, thank you so much. Connor, thank you for that. Roger Gilbertson, of course, and I have been in contact a lot. I'd love to hear from all of you with your thoughts, and always come to the briefings with at least one question or some comment. I want to have you participate. It's very important. So that's it for now. Our time is gone, but we will see you again next month, the second Tuesday of the month, for the Ambassador Briefing. I'm Jim Melton, and look forward to seeing you again. We're in touch, so you be in touch.
Take care. Bye.